Now we're going to implement the functionality of the app. So up until this point we just had the skeleton with all the variables declared. Now we're going to give it some kind of a purpose. So what we'll do is we'll implement the final two methods at the bottom, and these are the calculation and the print methods. So the calculation function will intuitively perform the calculation. So this is going to give our final investment the value by using the formula that we saw on the website. And the print function will just change the text of the text view to display our final value and some kind of a message. So now we have the skeleton of our code fully set up. We've we've declared all our variables up here, and we've initialized them down here and in here. So again, these are just providing a variable to store the text field of these resources in, and this is just taking the info from those text field, the input, which will be some kind of a number, so principal investment, interest rate, compounds per year, and years invested, and is storing these in these variables so that we can perform the calculation. And that is what we're going to do now. So we're going to implement the calculate function and the print functions. And by then we should have a fully working app. So let's go ahead and do that now. So this is going to be pretty much exactly like what we had in iOS. So if we take a look at our formula again, just switch to our Chrome window. This is the one that we're going to be looking at. So we have our final investment is our principal times 1 plus the interest over the number of times compounded, and that's all going to be raised to the power of the number of times compounded times the number of years invested. Okay, and with that in mind, let's go back to Xamarin Studio. So we have the final investment is equal to the principal investment times, and now here's where we're going to use that power function again. So what we have to do is we have to do system.math.power, and if you notice when I type in .math, and then there's a lot of different functions here. So there's power, there's pi, there's log functions, exponents, equals. So most of these take in doubles, but again, there's a lot of different things that you can do with this, a lot of different built-in math functions. So keep that in mind. Okay, and within this, we're going to have the first bit and then the second bit. So the first bit is going to be 1 plus the interest rate divided by the number of times compounded per year. So this was compounds per year. And in fact, I'm going to get rid of these brackets because they're not needed. And then this one is going to be simply the compounds per year times the years invested. Alright, so that's our formula set up. Now there's one more thing we have to do here, and that's to change the interest rate into a decimal number. Because right now, it is a percent, and that will severely screw up our calculations. So if we pretty much any calculation that involves a percent is going to be taking that percent in as a decimal. So any time there's a percent in any kind of equation, we have to first convert it to a decimal by dividing it by 100. So if you're making any kind of calculator, you may have to do this step a lot, otherwise you'll get numbers that are hundreds of times bigger than they should be. Okay, so this is our calculate function. Again, exactly the same as in iOS. So the principal investment is equal to 1 plus the interest rate over compounds per year, all raised to the power of compounds per year times years invested. Now let's print this out, and the way we did that is again going to be the same as in iOS. So that's to change the label. Well, in iOS it's called a label, but in Android it's going to be called a text view. But they're basically doing the same thing. It's just a place to hold some text that can only be modified from within the code. So whereas edit texts, if we go to the main.xml, see these edit texts, these are for text inputs. You can modify the input. The text view and the label in iOS, they can't be modified without actually doing the modification within the code. So they can't be modified by the user once they're up there. So this is going to be, what we're going to have is the final investment text, and that's just going to take the text from this text view. It's going to be here. It's just changing the value. So it's going to be, let's have the string first that says the final value of your investment is, and then let's have the dollar sign because we want to display it in dollars. And then it's going to be plus the final investment. Alright, so now this is going to display our final investment, which is going to be the results of this calculation, and that calculation will be performed when this button is clicked. The only thing that we need to change here, and if you remember we did the same in iOS, is to change the output format. So this right now is going to output a double, which could have up to 12 decimal places. It's not a very good way to represent money because money only has at most 2 decimal places. So we'll use this little line. It's going to be final investment equals double.parse. And again, this is the same as we did in iOS, so you guys should have seen this before. So this is going to be, then we're going to do string.format, and that's going to take on the following form. So we have the format we want the string to be in, and that's going to look like this. We have the 0 colon, and then the 0 dot, and then the 2 pound signs here. And then we'll do comma, and then we're going to have final investment. Alright, so just to recap, this line is basically taking the final investment, it's saying it's changing it to a string and giving it this format. So the 0 is mandatory, that we have to have at least one number before the decimal and an up to 2 numbers. So if there were no decimal places, that's fine, but this means it cannot have more than 2 decimal places. Okay, and then we're changing this to a double, we're passing it to a double, and storing it back into final investment. So this just ensures that final investment doesn't have more than 2 decimal places. Okay, as of right now, I believe we have a working app, so we'll give it a go in the next little part here. In this part of our tutorial, we implemented the functionality of our app. So the calculation function obviously performed the calculation, and it called the print function, which just basically changed the value of the text view text. So this is changing, going into the text view text, and it gave it the value of a message, and then we appended our final investment value onto the end of that. So by now, you should be able to implement basic functionality in these kind of little calculator apps in Android and in iOS.